is Damien Lamar. I released another full-length LP, and it's called Quadrilogy. Quadrilogy is a four-volume body of work, and it is the really 10th year remaster. I had originally started creating all the material back in June of 2012, shortly after my grandmother passed away, and put out the very first volume called Light Travel, which was about 7 songs. And then I put a couple songs, maybe about 3 songs, on the second volume, which was called MOTERE SANCTUM. And then the third volume is called Master Intelligence. And the final volume I released at the literally on the last day of 2020, and I called it the fall of 2020 because a lot of us were going through so much that year. So it's a 4-volume body of work, and I put it all together, and it's very odd. It's really obscure. It's an electronic music album. Also falls in the guise of ambient music. That's the way I guess they categorize my music. Very experimental. I use a lot of sound design components, lots of synths, and it is very synthetic. It's not as organic. The only organic elements were that I used a few field recordings, such as like bees, and I used telephone sound. I used some white noise, and then of course I use my voice. I am a singer, but this particular album I didn't sing on. I just did a couple oohs and some ahs. So I'm excited about it because it serves as a score or a soundtrack to an upcoming project that I'm working on. And I'm in the process of writing. This is I write in this. But I'm in the process of actually writing my very first book. And is it going to be a novel? I'm still debating. I think more than likely I'm going to shoot for like a mini novella, do some flash fiction. The premise of the book is that there is a person by the name of Demetrius the Wise, who is the very first archivist and very first time traveler. And the first scene is set during the burnings of the great library of Alexandria. So if you don't know about what that is, do a little research, go back in time a little bit. We'll do a little time travel today. And Cleopatra, which everybody knows as Cleopatra, her name was actually Cleopatra the Seventh Philopator. She was Macedonian. She was not Egyptian. She and her brother ruled the throne, and at that time, it is said that Cleopatra and the Egyptians owed the Roman Empire about 17 million drachmae. I'm not sure what that equates to today. But Julius Caesar was pursuing Pompey, who also had come into it. Was said that he had come to Alexandria, Egypt at the time. And he pursued Pompey specifically to collect on his debt. On the Roman Empire's debt, and only to find out that Pompey was beheaded, and his ring and his head was presented to him. Cleopatra then wooed Julius Caesar, and shortly thereafter, Julius Caesar began creating this calendar that we are all under, the Julian calendar. It's named after Julius Caesar. That's when it all started. So I decided to write my characters and go back to that particular period so that the cool thing about it, so that we can have a conversation about what really transpired. If you don't know anything about the Library of Alexandria at the time was the largest, the most huge, largest library there was to date. And the Great Harbor, which was there in Alexandria, Egypt, was a place where all these ships would come in. And as the ships would come in, they would basically take all of the books. They'd take the original books, they would go and transcribe them, and then they would keep the books and then give copies of the individuals who showed up on these ships at the harbor. And that's how the library got so big. Well, it is said that the library, and we know this, that the library actually suffered several different fires. the very first fire was possibly an accident. And that was when Julius Caesar showed up at to again get that debt. He shows up, and one of his soldiers, or we don't know, caused the fire, and that was the very first fire. There were subsequent fires that happened over a couple hundred years due to a lot of calamity that was happening. But I decided to write a story set in the middle of that period, just to shine a light on what was really happening and to almost like take us back in time. His name is Demetrius the Wise, first time traveler, and very first archivist who helped to build the museum and the library. And I'm in the process of writing that. I'm about 9 chapters in. I have been picking up a lot of momentum, and this is something that I've been working on for almost a year now. I've been picking up a lot of momentum, so my goal is to have everything done by the early fall, and I'll be putting out a historical fiction podcast. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for you guys to read this and you guys to experience it. It will be dealing with time, the past, the present, the future. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. I just gave you a little bit of information to sort of give you the foundational period, but it is called Time Traveler's Digest, and my album Quadrilogy that dropped today is really the score and the soundtrack for this body of work. So in the coming weeks, you'll be hearing more about that. Again, you can find Quadrilogy on iTunes. You can find it on Apple Music. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on YouTube Music, Amazon MP3, wherever you listen to your music. Go check it out. Also, in 2020, shortly after the pandemic began and we were all in, lockdowns, I decided to take each song and create a video for each song, and I put that on my YouTube channel, so you can listen to the entire album, but you can actually visualize it and you can kind of see a little bit where I was going with some of this. Not telling the story about who Demetrius the Wise was, who also is known as ProfessorClock. Not really telling that story, but using the music to help me write. And it worked, believe it or not. So now I have a full-length album. What you can find streaming, of course, would be solely the music that is only 17 tracks. But then on my website, 23, because there's a bunch of bonus cuts and things that I have not released as of yet. So I would really appreciate your support. And I hope you like the sounds. It's very, as I mentioned, it's very obscure, very, very weird. If you want to do some research about what it is, I have on my website, a lot of information is there. Check out my blog. I wrote a lot about it. The album it started because of grief, what I was dealing with the loss of my grandmother. I was going through a breakup. I was moving. I was dealing with a lot of, and my therapist said, "Oh, you're going through adjustment phase disorder." I was going through a lot back in 2012, 2013, but instead of me like writing and journaling, I decided to go and spend a lot of time in front of my computer. I had an iPad. I had some sound editing tools that I was using. I was using my iPhone and a bunch of different sound apps on the iPhone. And that's how it all began. And I didn't know what it was called. I just was creating this music. And then I said, okay, I'll go ahead and put this body of work together. And I released a little bit of it on my SoundCloud page. And then as time progressed, I started, it just kind of got easier. And then all of a sudden the idea came and I'm like, oh my God, I'm writing something about a person. Who is Professor Clock? Professor Emmett Clock was a code name that I gave him just as a placeholder until I can actually decide who this person was. So again, the album is called Quadrilogy. It could have been called Tetralogy, but I didn't like the way that tetralogy sound. I like Quadrilogy because quad indicates 4. So 4 volumes, Light Travel, MOTERE Sanctum, Master Intelligence, and the last album, The Fall of 2020. I love reading books. Like, as you can see here, this is one of my favorite books right now. I'm reading the Abundance book. This is helping me with my writing. I am reading in the process several short sentences about writing by Verlin Klinkenborg. This helps immensely because I seem to write in a really weird way where I just kind of like brain dump and my paragraphs are kind of disjointed. So this helps me just write a sentence at a time. I'm also reading, and I use this. This is called the Copywriter's Handbook. So this is, of course, great. And this is helping me as well. What They Never Told You About the Untold History of Egypt. Super interesting. That's all I can say. And then I spend a lot of time using this. This is a character workbook by T.M. Holiday. And in here is how I began falling in love with my characters and writing their personalities and creating the character profiles. So these are, I'm surrounded by these books amongst a bunch of other books in several different places all over my house. But that's what like I gravitate to all the time. Again, I'm in the process of writing this book called Time Traveler's Digest. Everything you need to find out about me and about my projects are on my website at damienlamar.com. So head over there. It's a dive. You can go down the rabbit hole. The album is very, very obscure. I call it an idiosyncratic cinema verite cacophony of different sounds. And it's just a bunch of different, a lot of different crazy sounds. But again, it's mainly the soundtrack. So if you're listening to the music, what you could do is literally imagine what it must be like to travel back to ancient Egypt during that period and specifically find out who burned the library, why the library was burned down, who really caused it. Was it really Julius Caesar? Was it one of his soldiers? Was it an accident? Was it really something that was intentional? And why do we have the propensity to constantly destroy knowledge? Because guess what? In my research, I found that there are other libraries that were also destroyed. Why do we have the propensity to take all of this knowledge that we have from eons and of civilizations, like maybe information about how the pyramids were built, maybe information about how the Loch Ness was there, maybe information about real mathematics or Atlantis, maybe that really existed, but guess what? We burned it down. So now we have to sort of like try to figure out what happened. And the information that was found, who is the keeper of those artifacts? So my book deals with questioning proposing a lot of questions, but using a historical fiction theme to sort of paint this story about what really, really possibly happened at that time. And then my album Quadrilogy is the soundtrack or the bass to help set the tone. So when you go to the movies and you're watching a film or you're watching something on TV, you hear that music. And believe it or not, if you remove that, it wouldn't be as dramatic. If you go and just completely take it all out, you would not have as much of the impact or the emphasis of that scene. So I thought it was fitting to help me to write this book, to create my own soundtrack so that I could literally begin writing. And then when you read as the reader, or as a visual person like myself, or you check out the visual album on my YouTube channel, as you see those things, you can kind of imagine your own story. And if you feel so compelled to share with me what you're imagining, who knows, I may include it in my book. So I will be reaching out in the next couple weeks and months, looking for individuals who like to write and who would help me write some of this. It's called Time Traveler's Digest, just like Reader's Digest, where you have the editor write a monthly story, and then there's a bunch of people that actually write in, but they're all writing stories about time travel. So isn't that fun? I think it is. So thanks so much for watching. You're asking what my sign is. I am an Aquarius with a Scorpio rising and a moon in Capricorn. That explains a lot about my exuberance, a lot about my passion, and a lot about I like to call myself weird. I am very weird, And I own my weirdness. I own my peculiarity. And it took me a while though, honestly. I went through a lot as a child. I was raised by a single mother, an absent father, and I overcame. I, stayed in school, went to college, graduated, work in the financial services industry, and that's because I was literally taught to be an overachiever and a hard worker. At the same time, I've always been a creator. I started singing at the age of 12 when I won my very first talent show with a song by Sandy Patty called Pour on the Power. And won the talent show and was kind of shocked. And then all of a sudden, the universe played a really interesting trick on me and puberty happened. And Damien, you didn't want to hear me sing at all at that point. So I started taking music lessons, and I picked up a saxophone and started playing sax. And I was in jazz and symphonic band in high school or junior high school. And then I just got tired of lugging that saxophone around and slowly started taking voice lessons and was in choirs and sing in church and stuff like that. And then when I graduated high school, that's when I became like very, very serious about singing as a vocalist. And I've since released a lot of different music. So you'd find a bunch of stuff. If you dig, you will find a lot of information about me. Lately, I have been very candid about my life and the things that I've gone through, and I realized that I was dealing with things because of trauma and things that I dealt with as a child that caused me to be the way I am because of what I experienced and the traumatic things that happened to me in my life. I am an overcomer because I've overcome the trauma, and now I don't have those trauma triggers anymore. And because of that, I've managed to make some really, really good sound decisions in the last couple years. I've walked away and I've changed locations. I've moved. I used to live in Florida. Now I live in New Hampshire. I own my own business. I've incorporated recently, so I have my own corporation. I call myself a self-professed polymath, which is a person who knows a myriad of different subjects, or if you've heard the cliche, the jack of all trades, the master of none, that would be me. I mean, I do graphic design, website design, work in the financial services industry. I love branding, and I have a branding company, but I also am a musician and a writer. And head over to my website, damienlamar.com. The link is in the profile of my bio. And go down the rabbit hole, check out that album Quadrilogy. If that's not your thing, then you can, because I'm a left brain, right brain person. I feel like Quadrilogy is just more of a logistical left brain project, where my other projects in the music that preceded it, I released an album in September of 2020, and that was called Waiting Redux. And that's available if you like R&B and you like singing and you want to dance. That's for that. Quadrilogy is my left brain. Waiting is my right brain. So I don't have to be in one specific genre. I'm an artist, so I can create and do whatever I feel like, and I feel like you can too. So don't let the limitations of society and how the programming of how society tell you, oh, you have to be in this box, or you have to do this style of music, or you have to do this style of art. You, as a creator or procreator, can do whatever you want to do. That is completely up to you. You guys are watching. If you're watching this right now, it's meant for you to see it. So thank you for taking out the time to spend this few minutes with me, to hear me ramble about Quadrilogy, my album that just dropped at midnight last night. It's out. Go listen to it. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate your love. I appreciate the kind words. Let's keep vibrating high and keep this frequency up, because the more we raise the frequency of the planet up, the more we can elevate, and we can actually get back to doing the things that we are really meant here to do. This negative, low vibrating chaos drama is exhausting, and it's exhausting Mother Earth. So it's our job to kind of keep things elevated and raise things up as much as humanly possible. So I love you guys. You have a wonderful day too. Thanks so much for taking out the time to even comment. I appreciate you guys so much. Have a fantastic day. Bye, guys.